Hey Mallards, it is Sunday and I thought I'd talk more about the Birch House Residency. It actually ends tomorrow. We're going to have our little wrap up and then I have a PDT show, so it's going to be a very eventful evening tomorrow. But I'm still probably going to, over the next few weeks, talk about the different things that they did and different lessons, just the ones that really spoke to me and that I want to discuss or share or talk about creativity and the process of it and that sort of stuff, because I'm not necessarily having the most exciting days, but I'm still doing things and I'm interested in talking to you about the things I'm doing and what's involved in all of that. So I figured now seems like a good time to do that sort of stuff. Today I want to talk about writer's block and what the residency called the creative swamp, which is a term that I actually hadn't heard before. And I want to talk about that specifically because it was very interesting to me. So writer's block, most people are familiar with. It's when you get to a point in your writing or creating, it can be a creative block too, where you're suddenly stuck and you don't know what to do next and you're staring at an empty page because you can't start, or you're staring at the next scene trying to figure out what the heck should be happening or whatever it is. You're just struggling with what to create next. And I have this sometimes, less when I'm writing, because I tend to write with just absolute wild abandon and, whatever happens, happens, and let's just vomit out everything and eventually someday probably never come back and edit it. I'm really bad at editing. That's my weak point. That part where you're supposed to revisit the things you've written and judge them. I don't like that part. But I don't have as much an issue with that traditional idea of writer's block when it comes to actually writing. I do have that issue when it comes to creating a lot of other things or other things in my life, especially when there's some sort of project that is large. And this is one of the things they mentioned, that sometimes writer's block is just caused by being sort of overwhelmed by all of the things. And that's an issue for me. I tend to procrastinate stuff in general. As a general rule, I am a procrastinator. It is my biggest fault, for sure. My biggest fault? Yeah, I would say that it's probably my biggest fault is my procrastination. I tend to procrastinate a lot more than I should, and it does sometimes become an issue, especially when I'm working on a project where there are a million things that need to get done. I sort of get into this part where I'm frozen. It's creative block, where I can't figure out what to do first because there are 600 things that need to be done, and oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do right now? And so I hadn't really thought about it in terms of writer's block and hadn't really thought about dealing with it the same way. So that has been interesting for me to sort of think about that over this last week and think about the idea that I could take the small steps or do a lot of the other things, relax, take a walk, go to sleep. Taking a nap is one of the things they recommend to help with writer's block. And wow, I should really do that more often. Naps do help me. When I'm feeling like I can't do something, taking a nap is very helpful to me. Sleeping, not always helpful. Because right now, at this time at night, 10:40 something, I feel amped, I feel ready to go, I'm feeling good. And if I just give my brain a second, it can get going. But during the day, when I'm feeling burnt out, I should really just take a nap. Naps do wonders. I wake up from a 1-hour nap feeling like I can conquer the world, which is way better than I feel in the morning when I wake up. So naps, man, they're underrated. So I have been thinking about that. And I think I'm going to consider a lot of these points when I'm working on my own creative process and when I'm stuck in that portion where I can't start because there are a million things to do. And how do you do a million things? The answer is one thing at a time, but that's what's hard for me to remember. But I mentioned that they also talked about creative swamps, which is another side of writer's block. And rather than I can't start this, it is when you get so mired in something that you stop moving forward. They talk about perfectionism being a big thing, where you're fixing, trying to find the right words, trying to find the exact way to do things, trying to be perfect, and that stops you from moving forward. Or research. In the beginning, you're just constantly researching things and you're not actually creating anything. I fall into that sometimes with my creative projects, but here is the creative swamp that I find myself in often, and that is idea generation. I could just spend all of my time coming up with thoughts and plans and ideas, and I get so excited by all of these new shiny potentials that I am the worst at moving beyond that. I will get stuck in that creative swamp for months where I'm just like, ooh, but what if I did this? Oh, imagine if I did this. Ooh, but what about this idea? Oh, it would be interesting if it went this way. What about that idea? What about this idea? What about that idea? Let me dream up this idea totally working. Let's think about this totally fanciful thing that's never going to happen. It's a similar idea to what the Vlogbrothers talk about when they talk about brain crack. And so my creative swamp is definitely idea generation, where I get so excited about coming up with all of these concepts and how cool they would be that I don't move forward to the next part where you pick one and execute it. And I've been thinking a lot about that this past week and been trying to not get stuck in that swamp creatively and to actually move forward and work on things and create things and do things one step at a time. And that goes for my creative pursuits, and it also goes a lot for making Phoenix Tears into a 501c3, which I have made steps towards, but which has stuttered a lot over the past couple of weeks because I've put it aside to do recording, and also because I am at the point where there's just a lot to do and I feel overwhelmed. It's very hard for me to take that initial step because I don't see a step, I see a gigantic stories tall leap that I have to make. And it's hard for me to make a leap mini stories because I've forgotten that there are actually just steps that I could walk up to get there. So let me know if you struggle with writer's block or creative block or being in some sort of creative swamp. And if you do, what is your creative swamp? I'd be curious to know. I hope you have a chance to think that through and get through it to be more creative. I'll see you tomorrow.